Hello everyone, my name is Susmit and I will be teaming up with Xiaohan Lee and Azadeh Hosseini to explicate the theories of Michel Foucault in this podcast. Michel Foucault was a French philosopher, historian, social theorist, and a literary critic. Foucault's theories essentially address the relationship between power and knowledge and how they are used as a form of social control through societal institutions. Though often cited as a post structuralist and postmodernist, Foucault rejected these labels. His thought has influenced academics, especially those working in communication studies, anthropology, sociology, cultural studies, literary theory, feminism, and critical theory. Foucault's works have exercised a powerful influence over numerous humanistic and social scientific disciplines as one of the most influential and controversial scholars of the post World War II period. According to a London School of Economics analysis in 2016, his works Discipline and Punish and The History of Sexuality were among the 25 most cited books in the social sciences of all time, at just over 100,000 citations. In 2007, Foucault was listed as the single most cited scholar in the humanities by the ISI Web of Science among a large quantity of French philosophers, and the compilation author stated that what this says of modern scholarship is for the reader to decide, and it is imagined that judgments will vary from admiration to despair depending on one's view. Foucault's detailed historical remarks on the emergence of disciplinary and regulatory biopower have been widely influential. Leo Bersani wrote on Foucault that he is our most brilliant philosopher of power. More originally than any other contemporary thinker, he has attempted to define the historical constraints under which we live at the same time that he has been anxious to account for, if possible, even to locate the points at which we might resist those constraints and counter some of the moves of power. In the present climate of cynical disgust with the exercise of political power, Foucault's importance can hardly be exaggerated. His work on biopower has been widely influential within the disciplines of philosophy and political theory. Foucault's discussions of the relationship between power and knowledge has influenced post-colonial critiques in explaining the discursive formation of colonialism. His writings, particularly The Theory of Sexuality, have also been very influential in feminist philosophy, where he explicates the relationship between power, sexuality, and bodies. His discussion on power and discourse have inspired many critical theorists who believe that Foucault's analysis of power structures could aid the struggle against inequality. They claim that through discourse analysis, hierarchies may be uncovered and questioned by way of analyzing the corresponding fields of knowledge through which they are legitimated. This is one of the ways that Foucault's work is linked to critical theory. In line with Foucault's discussion on power and cultural studies, this podcast would be covering three distinct topics. Firstly, Foucault's exploration of the rise of social medicine and its effect on the health of public would be discussed based on the discourse of power relations. Further, the relationship between power and contemporary feminist theory in the sporting context is evaluated. And lastly, a brief discussion is provided on how power controls bodies as a development genealogy of the modern regime of social control. Foucault explicates the concept of the formation of social medicine and its effect on the health of public. He presents an argument pertaining to the development of the medical system and the subsequent origins of the modern medicine in the West from the 18th century. He concisely explains three critical factors behind the rise of medical system: the idea of biohistory, medicalization, and the role of economy of health are the cornerstones to Foucault's description of the rise of social medicine. Further, these concepts are extrapolated to the rise of capitalism, which started by socializing the body and exertion of societal control over the body. Foucault states that the body is a biopolitical reality and medicine a biopolitical strategy. In line with this argument, the construction of three forms of social medicine are presented in what is today known as public health. The first form developed in concurrence with the rise of mercantilism, where the nations of Europe began to take interest in the health of their populations in the early 17th century. This sector was known as state medicine, as the state strived to create an active population. The organization of a state medicine knowledge, the standardization of the health profession, the subordination of the professionals to a general administration, and the incorporation of different professionals into a state controlled organization were the characteristics of state medicine. The second form of development of the social medicine was based on the concept of urbanization. The rise of urban population in Europe at the end of 18th century resulted in the rise of urban fear, characterized by the fear of cities, big towers, and urban epidemics. This led to the rise of urban medicine, characterized by the respect for private sector. The urban medicine served the health requirements of the urban population. The concept of health and well-being had its origins in the urban medicine. The third direction of the social medicine was labor force medicine. This sector of social medicine targeted the poor people and the workers. Foucault describes that the social unrest among the poor and transformation of the destitute population in the late 19th century resulted in the rise of labor force medicine. It was in this period that the decision was made to divide the urban space into rich and poor areas. This led to the emergence of tax-supported welfare and a medical intervention to meet their health needs, something that poverty placed beyond their hope. The concept of social welfare can be extended to today's neoliberal context, where the concept of public health in a social investment state has been confined to procuring economic benefits. For example, a child-centered sport and physical activity agenda is perceived as a social investment strategy, wherein the objectives of providing the sporting facilities is to milk the sports stars in future and extract economic benefits.
Further relationship between powers and female in sports according to Foucault's thoughts on powers and discipline are presented. In the federal era of absolute monarchy, power was demonstrated by autocracy and torture. Now people entering into the democratic system are in a different power system from the past. Foucault believes that, first of all, ruling power is not limited to the suppression effect and punishment, but enables power to produce a series of positive effects, even if these positive effects sometimes cause minor turbulence, nor does punishment simply mean the result of a social act, but the view of punishment as a complex social function. A social strategy that makes power a special technology to be exercised in a more general field. Second, discipline power exists in every aspect of society. To master or control object become the inner organization mechanism. Disciplinary power is a kind of uninterrupted, continuous force. It is a process rather than as a result. It will elaborate partition according to the specific situation of time, space, and activities, and ongoing recording makes the human operation carefully controlled, conquer the forces of the body, and impose these forces to tame by the power. In the framework of power system, the person will accept the restriction of power, accept the punishment, and be disciplined. People will also give fully play to his main initiative and conduct self-management according to the expectation of the power framework, so as to become the most effective implementation tool of power. Just as women have been living under the framework of male power system since they entered the long patriarchy society, they have accepted the concept of masculinity, of constantly reformed and managed themselves according to the expectation of men. Body in sports is the practitioners and form of the foundation of sports cultural symbol. male initiative through body mastery of the society to build the system of physical culture and sports for the center with male ideology, and starting from the date of the rise of feminism, sports is in the forefront of gender conflicts. Women today are neither the victims of past oppression nor getting rid of physical limitations. Foucault's analysis of power relations reveals the root of women's participation in sports and how women's power in sports is weakened and separated. Feminism's understanding of right in modern non-compulsory society is helpful to breaking through the recognition of sports for granted, giving fully play to the autonomy of individuals and not falling into fantasy of the dominant subject of masculinity. Now than in the past, women do have more sports participation opportunity, but the system still exists problem. The prison is still built by men in the monitoring of women, make it harder for women to jump out of the existing control of the power relations because of the implementation power become more subtle. Discrimination for women to participate in sports have becoming increasingly obscure. Therefore, women should not only focus on the liberation of the body, but should be more to think about why the liberation of the body. The body is being bound. In this way, can we truly protect women from the source power to participate in sports?
Although Foucault makes few references to women or to the issue of gender in his writings, his treatment of the relations between power, the body, and sexuality has stimulated extensive feminist interest. Foucault's idea that the body and sexuality are cultural constructs rather than natural phenomena has made a significant contribution to the feminist critique of essentialism. Foucault's genealogy follows Nietzsche as well as existential phenomenology in that it aims to bring the body into the focus of history rather than histories of mentalities or ideas. Genealogies are histories of the body. They examine the historical practices through which the body becomes an object of techniques and deployments of power. In Discipline and Punish, Foucault shows how disciplinary techniques produce docile bodies of prisoners, soldiers, workers, and school children were subjected to disciplinary power in order to make them more useful and at the same time easier to control. With the aim to correct the soul, a gentler sort of punishment was seen in the 19th century. Soul is nevertheless a highly structured regulation of the body that produces docility. Foucault calls this new system discipline, and his careful archaeology of the talks about punishment with the advent of modern prison leads him to come up with the claim that moving away from torture was not to punish less, but to punish better. In fact, to punish with an attenuated severity perhaps, but in order to punish with more universality and necessity, to insert the power to punish more deeply into the social body. Discipline, Foucault argues, shifts the emphasis away from results and onto processes of regulating the body not as a whole, but in its parts, rendering the body docile, a prison for the soul. This process has pervaded modern society beyond the prison, and for Foucault, we presently live in a carceral world. In this way, a critical discussion of Foucault's concepts and contribution to the field of social culture, cultural theory, feminist theory, and critical theory is facilitated, and its implications in the field of sport management are concisely captured.